allthingsfirstnet.com. With me today is Richard Murgon, Public Safety Consultant. And today we're going to talk about FirstNet issues that are in the news. So first, Dick, I noticed that you have, let me see if I can control it here, an article under Insights, an opinion article in reference to a company that used to be called Light Squared.
Yeah, so what that's about is back around 2008 to 2012, Light Squared was trying to deploy a satellite-based LTE network based on some satellites that they had launched. And it also operated under a name called Skyterra. And what we found is the signal was interfering with GPS. So there were a lot of airports having issues, the Department of Defense was, and public safety. Now, a lot of people may go, is this an in-vehicle thing? No, it actually relates more to the P25 networks, that it created enough interference to where the P25 could go out of sync. And when it goes out of sync, it just doesn't work. And so when I was on the APCO board, we talked to the FCC about it. NIPSTIC, I believe, was engaged at the time. And in effect, the FCC said they couldn't deploy. They ended up filing for bankruptcy, but now they're back under a new name. And the FCC last week gave them authorization to operate, but nobody's talked to public safety about it. This company, they knew that issue was out there. There's plenty of record. It's the same satellites. I've been told by their sources that they've reduced the power to mitigate the issue. But the reality is nobody knows because nobody's talked to them, nobody's tested. And if this is allowed to go forward unchecked, we run a significant risk because the more money they invest in it, the harder it will be to stop. And this could be another one of those public safety ugly moments like rebanding was, and the decades and billions of dollars it took to solve that problem. So I just wrote this little piece to just kind of make people aware. Obviously, other folks need to be pick up the banner on it. I know APCO has put in their member minute that they are aware of it. I haven't seen anything from NIPSTIC yet, but public safety needs to be aware. Somebody needs to be doing some testing. So again, as the article says, it's an old foe that's come back with a new name.
Right. And if I remember correctly, when I was on the APCO board a few years after you, that they actually did do testing, and there was that interference testing that the FCC decided not to authorize it. So do we know just how much power has been cut, reduced to make this thing work, or how did the changes come about where they got this authorization? Do you know for sure?
No, not a clue. Like I said, nobody knows anything. And I picked this up off of, I forgot how I tripped across it. I was looking for something else, and I saw this new company. And I know how. My brother asked me about if I'd heard this company called Legato because he was kind of interested in satellite-based cell phone. And I Googled it, and that's where it came to my attention that it was Light Squared, and it's back out there.
All right, I'm going to switch over here on the website. And the next thing I want to talk about, and it hasn't been posted on allthingsfirstnet.com yet, but a company, I think it's called AirGain Connect, is offering HPUE and a vehicle setup of some sort. And I noticed that Andy Siebold, who writes for us and has the public safety advocate on our site, is also talking about HPUE. How does it work? How it's available? And have you heard about this new company, Dick?
No, I hadn't. And it's nice to see that there's another company. I know there's a couple others working on it, but that's going to be a game changer for public safety in some of these areas that are kind of marginal with signal strength. I think the configuration is going to look a lot like IVRs, in-vehicle repeaters, where they'll take their basically smartphone and tether it back to the Wi-Fi in the patrol car, which will then be tied to one of the high power units, talking back to the cell site. So that way, when the handheld itself doesn't have a signal, the car will, and you just treat the car as kind of your hub. So it worked well for years for IVR, and if people just keep that in mind, think of me as an in-vehicle repeater, I think it'll make sense to a lot of people. I think the adoption rate is going to be pretty high.
That's good. And I know that we had Andy on another live session with us here a while ago. Maybe we ought to bring him back, since he seems to have a lot more information and can talk more in depth about it.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea with all the all the developments in it, a new company getting into it. Because again, additional companies going to drive the price down, make it much more affordable for public safety. Hey, the other thing I noticed on here that's still here was T-Mobile loses their GAO approval. It's interesting because they had, they're kind of spinning up their public safety offering, and there's a discussion about it's going to be free, or a certain amount of lines are free, but they clearly say they're not going to offer priority and preemption. Well, if you don't have priority and preemption, that's free. That's exactly what it's worth. Free, nothing.
Right.
And so they had appealed a government RFQ, where the RFQ had required that the bidder have enhanced priority type features. In that appeal, they said that basically was unfair because it wasn't competitive. And GAO came back and says, no, that completely is fair. That's a specification just like anything else. So they lost their appeal. So it's nice to see that we're not getting a whole lot of traction with some of these companies trying to offer public safety services, when in fact they're just commercial services. They're just like the same service your teenage child has, or your 7-year-old with their connected iPad. And one thing we don't want public safety having to compete with that 7-year-old over Spectrum on a commercial network, which is why we created FirstNet. But I thought that was interesting how they had put that language in the RFP very specifically, that the bidder had to have enhanced priority type features, and GAO upheld it as being legitimate. So,
well, and that's good, and that's a good step, I think, going forward also, because as you have mentioned, other companies are providing a service and claiming it's for public safety, but they can't provide true priority and presumption. FirstNet does. So that's good. Maybe we'll start seeing some more of that when others try and do the same.
About this article here about the city of Alexandria, Virginia, is doing FirstNet for 911 remote call taking during pandemic. Have you talked to anybody about it, or?
No, I haven't. It's interesting. I have heard that a lot of comm centers these days are trying to use different services to be able to call take from home and dispatch from home in light of COVID. But no, I haven't talked to anybody personally about it, but it's interesting to note that it's the FirstNet connection that's keeping it separate from everything else out there in the cellular world. Yeah,
I mean, as you and I know, being in the industry for over 30, 40 years, too long, for so long, it's always been, oh, you can't do this remotely. You got to be in the comm center. You got to be there. And here we've got an agency finally doing it. And I've always believed there's no reason why you can't do it. As long as you've got qualified, well-trained people, there's no reason why you can't do call taking and dispatching from a remote location or in a home. I mean, we do it in mobile command posts. We do it a multitude of other ways. This is just a little bit different.
Well, and is it really a little bit different other than the comfort of their own home? Because as you said, command centers have been doing it for a long time. They're mobile, they go anywhere. and people sit in them just like they would at home, granted not as comfortably. And it's probably a better environment for the call taker or the dispatcher. But like you said, in all reality, it's been done. It's might as well use it now in light of what's going on across the country with this COVID.
Yeah. Especially with all these cloud service-based companies like Rapid Deploy, that there's no reason why you can't. The only thing I think might be an issue is the NCIC inlets about ensuring somebody else isn't looking at any of that confidential information.
Right. I haven't kept up on that, but I can tell you that there are back in our day there were still things like privacy screens and other things that people couldn't actually see the screen or deal with it unless they were the person with their face right in front of it. So I don't know if that applies. Be interesting to research some more and talk about maybe at a later point in time.
Yeah, maybe we could get somebody from that group to do an interview with us. And again, you probably should point out for our listeners that if you got a topic you want to talk about, reach out to us, where we'd be happy to do a Facebook Live session with you and talk about anything from emergency operation centers, emergency communication centers, which is on our other site, All Things ECC, or anything related to FirstNet. We'd love to have the conversation.
All right, so we're starting to get more and more of these. We've done, and actually quite a few on All Things FirstNet and a couple on All Things ECC, but I also put out a promo video the other day inviting people to share the website, All Things ECC, and we can do the same here. If you haven't seen our site, please go to it, allthingsfirstnet.com. It's just as the name says, everything we talk about is related to FirstNet and public safety. So again, as Dick said, you have something you want to talk about, you want people to see it, feel free to get a hold of us. There's an info link on the site, which will come to me, and we can see about setting it up.
Yeah, the other thing I want to point out to our viewers is that we do run a number of webinars in a given month. Lately, we've been focused on grants with all the federal spending going on, all the grants coming out, and more specifically with the declared disaster, people are responding to the COVID-19, and any cost related to that is I don't want to use the word chargeable, but you can apply for reimbursement to FEMA under what they call Part B public assistance to help offset the cost. Now, there's obviously a number of rules around that, like it's got to be overtime, it's got to be directly related to the response and recovery, but we cover that in those webinars, and we've got one of the best grants people in the nation, and we listen to other people's grants webinars, and there's a fair amount of inaccurate information being distributed. So please be aware when listening to other grant companies. And I know I'm kind of touting our own, but we got real life experience. Our grant person was a deputy chief for Nevada Division of Emergency Management and managed numerous federal grants at the state level. Brett and I have both been involved in a number of federal grants, federal disasters. So we've got a lot of local experience. And so we are not people who've read a book or taken training. We're people who've been there, done that.
That's a fact. And if you notice up on the screen, there's a section on our website that deals with grants, and there's a portion of it right here that says how to get grant assistance. And if you click on that and have questions, we'll get it to our grant specialist and get some information back to you. But also on the site, we list the different programs that are available under grants. Here's as soon as it pops up, webcasts we've been doing, they're all listed. So if you want to take a look at those, feel free to. And as Dick said, there are more grant webcasts coming up. So pay attention to our site, and we'll also be advertising them in other ways.
Yep.
And with that, Dick, I think we've
I think that
pretty much
covers it
things
for
on
this
there.
week.
What?
I think that covers it for this week.
That's about what I was going to say. Again, want to thank you for your time, folks. We'll post this on our website. And again, if you know of anybody that wants to come forward and do a video and talk about things going on related to FirstNet, because that's what it's really all about, FirstNet and public safety, get a hold of us. And with that, we'll end the session. Thanks again, Dick. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brent.